Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 252 of Optimal Living Advice, the podcast where we take any questions you might have about the many struggles of life and get them answered for you here on the show. I am your host, certified life coach Greg Audino, reminding you before we begin that if you have a question you would like help with on the show, we welcome you to email it to us at advice@oldpodcast.com. And today, we'll have a look at a really good question that was sent in, a simple yet effective one that has come from a woman who just can't tell if these guys she's dating are being honest about why they're breaking things off with her. Let's dive right into this question and see if it's the right question to be asking at all. Here it is. I am struggling with dating. When a man tells me he needs more time to work through something, I cannot seem to interpret if he's being honest or if he's just not into me. We boys can be so hard to read, can't we? Thank you for sending this in, Asker. I appreciate it. It is a tough question, though. And when I say tough, I mean unanswerable. You can't correctly interpret whether or not they're telling the truth every time. You just can't. But the good news is I doubt it matters, because to me, there's a much more efficient way to look at this question. But first off, I really want to reiterate not only the impossibility of answering your question the way it is, but why you shouldn't bother to anyway. Because I think you're hurting yourself by trying to answer it. There are too many variables. Maybe they're all lying, maybe none of them are. Maybe it's a blend, which of course is most probable. Maybe some guys wish they were more ready to date and really try to be, but inevitably come to realize that they aren't once they get too close to someone. I've been there. Maybe some guys think they're doing the right thing by being nice and saying they have their own things to work out when they truly just aren't that interested. I've been there too, unfortunately. You would not have wanted to swipe right on 23 through 27-year-old Greg. And hey, maybe the real gooey notion about romance is true, right? Maybe if a guy does like you enough, he should be willing to try that much harder to work through his stuff if it means being with you. That might be for real. Who knows? Doesn't matter. You don't need to get to the bottom of any dating prospect, past or future. You don't need to know if they're telling the truth about this, because knowing the difference is not a useful objective. It is not a victory for you. It doesn't help you to know whether they're lying or not, because either way, they aren't good matches for you at this point in time, right? The only way you could make practical, advantageous use of this information as to whether or not they're lying would be using it to change your approach to dating. Whether they're all lying about having their own stuff to work on or whether they're all telling the truth, you need to focus on what it says about you, your approach to dating, how to accept it, and then how to alter it if you want to. Luckily, we have an opportunity here to do both. So, scenario number one would be if they're all telling the truth and they all do need to figure out some personal issues before they can give themselves fully and properly date someone as wonderful as you. Questions to ask yourself would include, but are not limited to, are you making a habit of trying to save people? Are you dating only transients who are constantly ready to move to the next thing? Are you dating people who have pushed away others in their lives and take a sort of pride in not having many connections? Do you like bad boys? Do you tend to go after emotionally detached or argumentative types? Ultimately, what kinds of things do all these guys have in common? That's what I'm asking. Seeking patterns between all these men is going to be very, very useful for you, whether they're all telling the truth or whether they're lying and they just aren't into you. And that brings me to scenario number two, which would be none of these guys liking you enough, but just not wanting to say it. So, some questions for this might include, but again, are not limited to, are you behaving in such a way that might be off-putting? If this is hard to be honest about, which it is, then what might some trusted, painfully honest friends or family have to say about this? Maybe you're rushing in. Maybe you're going too slow. Are you asking questions that are too personal right away? Are you grilling them or scrutinizing them so as to get the hurt over with faster? Are you sharing too much personal information? This list of questions could really go on. But like I said, the odds are there's a blend of truth speakers and liars in there. And even if there wasn't, the best thing you can take away from this whole dating debacle would be to not let all this frustration and all these unanswered questions generate the D word, desperation. We all know that misery or desperation is not attractive, at least not for those without martyr complexes. But even worrying about that is disempowering and serving only those who you might date. More importantly, most importantly, you have to answer to yourself. And the more desperate you become, the less comfortable with being single you are, the less you accept yourself as you are. And, none of this makes for a good mental space to start a relationship in. Maybe you're already feeling this way. Look, that's okay. We'll say it. That is okay. We can all get lonely, and especially if dating has been hard, it can be scary to think that we may be running out of time or options. There's no shame in this. But feeling that way is different from letting that feeling drive you into more dating and trying to force relationships. That is when you get problems. If you or anyone else is feeling desperate, do not judge yourself. Rather, accept the fact that you're in this state and just know that actively avoiding dating for the time being is probably a good long-term decision to finding yourself and finding a suitable partner. The best people to date are those who are fully comfortable but not reliant on being single. And sure, it might be hard to identify when you're comfortable enough alone that dating seems like an exciting supplement to your life rather than a void filler. Well, just keep working on it. Date when you want it, not when you need it. And should someone organically come along that seems like a good fit while you're doing this work on yourself, you don't have to necessarily ignore them. But just know that making the effort to always seek partners while in a state of insecurity does not give you high odds of finding a successful relationship. The only exception would be if you manage to find someone very secure and willing to work with you to help you develop your own independence. Those are rare, though. They exist, but they're rare. So your best odds, if you want to try to put numbers on it, are when you are dating from a place of happiness with just yourself. And simply put, the closer you get to that, the higher your odds are. The farther you are from that, the lower they are. To the woman who sent this in, I thank you. I hope this episode was able to help you and everyone out there break away from the need to have answers and instead refocus on, well, how to play your part to develop yourself as someone who does not need answers at all. Guys, this is another one where I think there's a lot of overlap as, we all ask huge questions of ourselves and our lives, the answers to which aren't really going to save us from underlying problems that would be wiser to spend time addressing. So if you think this may apply to you, but you aren't sure how, or you aren't sure how to handle it, be sure to reach out and I will be happy to help. But otherwise, thanks so much for stopping in and for supporting the show. And what can I say? I will look forward to talking to all of you guys next time. Be good.